This is the 30th Pan-Pacific Conference from the Sandton Convention Center. My name is Dupree Strauss, and I will be interviewing some of the key speakers at this conference. Right now with me, I have Shaun Vorster, Special Advisor to the Minister of Tourism in South Africa. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
You just came from a session where the general topic was optimizing economic development drivers. Tell us in brief what some of the issues are that came up in that session.
Well, I think it's important to recognize that tourism has grown exponentially from relatively low levels. Back in 1950, there were only about 25 million international tourist arrivals worldwide. Last year, for the first time ever, the global tourism industry reached a milestone of 1 billion international tourist arrivals.
Wow.
And on the back of this growth, tourism has proven itself as a force for good. Tourism represents about 9% of a global GDP. Its direct and indirect contribution combined, and 1 in every 11 jobs on this planet is created by the tourism industry and supporting industries. So it's proven itself as one of those critical vehicles for social inclusion, to address poverty, to create jobs in South Africa, but also worldwide. To continue to ensure that we grow into the future, there's a number of challenges that governments can address. These include visa barriers, travel facilitation. It includes facilitating greater airlift. We need gradual liberalization of the skies to make sure that it's easier to reach destinations at competitive prices. And then the carbon footprint of a sector. Sustainability of tourism in the long run will be a key part of our future.
Right, interesting. One of the issues that comes up more often than not at this conference in particular is the issue of climate change and how it affects tourism. How does climate change in South Africa in particular affect our tourism?
Well, we must recognize that tourism is both a vector and a victim of climate change. The tourism sector contributes to global warming through its emissions in land transport, in particular air transport, but also buildings and accommodation and other tourism attractions. But then it's also a victim of climate change. We're extremely sensitive to changes in ecosystems, to sea level rise, to changes in our biodiversity offerings, impacts on seasonality. So therefore, doing nothing about climate change is not an option. We need to address the growing carbon footprint of tourism, and there's various ways of doing that. In the accommodation cluster, it can be done through energy efficiency, retrofitting, the massive rollout of renewables and green building design. In the land transport cluster, it's passenger modal shifts to high-speed rail, for example, to improved public transport in green cities, but also more fuel-efficient vehicles and lower carbon fuels. And then the big piece that we need to address is aviation. Aviation's addicted to kerosene jet fuel because of its transnational nature, and there's no substitute yet for kerosene jet fuel. But we can achieve major carbon abatement in aviation by, for example, changing operations, the way we run airports, the way we operate aircraft, shortening flight routes. We can cut back the emissions of international aviation by about 10% just by managing operations and infrastructure better. But in the long run, we'll need to switch from kerosene jet fuel to lower carbon fuels. And there it's only second generation sustainable biofuels that can fill that gap. Now, second generation biofuels are unique in that it doesn't compete like first generation biofuels. So food production, it doesn't need the same volumes of water. And we really need to invest in the research and development now to make sure we make that scalable over the next 20 years.
Right. Thank you very much. That was Shaun Vorster, Special Advisor to the Minister of Tourism in South Africa. This is the 30th Pan-Pacific Conference.